we do it this way. Okay. Who cares about speaker notes, right? Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Loris. Yeah, I work at the Zigtoberfest Foundation. And as David said, I do stuff sometimes publicly. The idea, usually when I do my Twitch streams, if I have to be honest, I usually am a little bit selfish, meaning I work on the stuff that I want to work on. I don't try to put up a show for the audience. The result is that you see me watch me work on doing the actual work, which usually is kind of boring. But if you want to see what programming in Zig looks like, in case you're, Zig curious, that's one way of doing it, for example. In any case, yeah, I wrote a static site generator. The website is zine-ssg.io. And my plan for this talk is not to dive too deep into the technical details, because I assume that if you're somebody who is already part of the Zig community, you had other opportunities to know how it works, how it interacts with the Zig build system, etc. And instead talk more about like the big picture, the kind of thing that it makes sense to talk to say to a Zig audience, and maybe not so much to say to like a more general audience. So I've gone to other conferences and spoke about Zine, but I usually only focus on the technical part in that case. That said, David told me that I got 5 to 10 minutes extra time. So I will show you a brief demo. Let's see if we make it work. You know what? At this point, just give me the mirroring, I guess. Okay. So, for the demo, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna clone the Zigtoberfest website, which is made in Zine. I've never done so. This is my first time taking a look at it. So, it's not a code review, though. But I want to show you what the experience kind of is. So git clone. So you run Zig serve, and that starts the local web server. The first time you run this, it takes a while because it has to compile the entire Zig toolchain. Sorry, the entire Zine toolchain. So Zine, if you've used Hugo, by the way, who here has used Hugo in the past, or Zola maybe? Okay, Hugo, Zola, a few people. So those static site generators come as an executable, so they are ready to use. But in my case, I'm distributing it as source code. This is going to change in the future, but for now, we are integrated with the Zig build system, and so the Zig build system builds the tooling and then also builds your website. So it happened now. I can click that link, and now I have my local preview. So just like other similar tools, it does what you would expect. So for example, if I open a new tab, open my trusty editor, and then I actually cd into the right folder first. Look at the files. For example, I can change the content. So index.md, what's in here? What is Zigtoberfest? And maybe you don't know. So you say, I don't know. You save, and it changes the preview. Nothing mind-blowing, to be honest. All other static site generators support this, the modern enough ones. But it is to say that, well, Zine is kind of getting there. It's still an alpha project. If you go on the website, you saw it in my slide. There's a yellow box that says Zine is alpha software. Using Zine today means participating in its development. The box is not lying, but the critical amount of features to actually make it usable is there. So basically, I will make a case in this talk that you should use Zine to build websites. You don't have to, of course, but let me get there. So first of all, Zine was built because Zig made it feasible. For a while, I've been annoyed at Hugo. I used a bunch of static site generators in the past, and I was very annoyed. I liked Hugo in comparison to previous ones, JavaScript frameworks, especially, that I come to despise over time. because my original implementation of my personal blog was with Gatsby. That's a JavaScript framework. And man, that ironically enough, when I moved from x86-64 Intel Macs to ARM, my JavaScript website was the only thing that I could import to the new architecture. Because the JavaScript depended in turn on C dependencies for CSS minification, image processing, and that C code would just not compile on ARM. And so I just couldn't port my website. So that said, over time, Hugo, I became stressed out with Hugo because I didn't like the templating language, and I felt that a lot of things could be made better. But at the same time, I didn't want to write a freaking static site generator. Like, that's a lot of work. I didn't want to do it. I'm sure we can all share the perspective of, man, there's this big thing. It kind of sucks. The ones that everybody uses kind of suck. I think I could do better, but man, I don't want to do better. I just want that to be better for me for free. But at some point, I relented and I tried my hand. One point about how Zig made it feasible that might be more interesting is that the experience that you had just now works on macOS, works on Linux, probably works on Windows. Works on Windows, confirmed? Okay, there have been bugs on Windows, but man, I just don't test this on Windows. I hate Windows as well. That said, I do want to support Windows. So the point is, it should be correctly multi-platform, and in good part, it is thanks to Zig. And I mean, as I said, I don't run it on Windows, so it's definitely not thanks to me that it works on Windows. Somewhat related to that, there's also another funny thing. As I was working on tooling around Zine, one interesting characteristic of Zine is that it has a custom templating language, which I implemented myself bottom from scratch. And so it's not one of those curly brace templating languages. I hate those as well. I wanted to make a better one. I'm not gonna dive too deep into that because that would be a whole talk in on itself. But I made a language server for HTML, and one interesting tidbit is that if you go to you search for SuperHTML, that's the name of my language server, and then VS Code, it's an extension on the VS Code marketplace. And one nice thing about this that was made possible very recently is that normally when you have an extension that depends on something that you implemented yourself, not in TypeScript, you have to install the extension, you have to download the CLI tool, you have to put your CLI tool in path, or the extension could manage this stuff for you, but it's very complicated. Like the official Zig extension can download the ZLS and Zig for you, but there is a lot of code that has to, detect your host system, find out the correct tarball somewhere on the internet, download it, unpack it, manage files, manage path. It's a mess. This one is interesting because recently it has become possible to run WebAssembly WASI blobs from within the extension. So now when you download the SuperHTML extension, you're also downloading the full language server itself. There's no other step. You just install the extension and you're good to go. And that's also, well, thanks to how Zig made it possible, because I'm targeting WebAssembly and it's so trivial. I almost had not to do anything to make that work. So that's definitely one big reason why Zing was built. But more interestingly, Zing was built to make better static websites. There's a lot of different kinds of websites that you can make. And we software developers, more often than not, are concerned, if we are concerned with websites at all, we tend to be concerned with websites where you have a complex backend, you have Redis, you have Kafka, you do event sourcing, you better do event sourcing, hexagonal architecture, message buses, load balancers, all that kind of jazz. But in reality, when it comes to making websites for things that are small scale but very interesting, all you need is a static website. The software you can love website is a static website, 99% of it, except the ticket sale page, because what's interesting about the project is the conference itself. The Zigtoberfest website can be a static website because it doesn't need much logic, right? What's interesting about that thing is the event itself. The Zine static site generator website itself is a static website because the Zine project, like the Zine tool, is the interesting thing. So my point is that if you're somebody who is already familiar with building static websites, you know what I'm getting at. But if you never really thought about it, know that there is a huge section, like a huge chunk of very interesting things that totally deserve and could use better websites. And a static website is just the right amount of complexity, nothing more, nothing less. Maybe some JavaScript like sprinkled on top if you really want to, but not even a ton most of the time. So this become very clear to me because, well, I probably should have mentioned the Zig official website is a static website. What's interesting about Zig doesn't have to be on the website past, just giving you download links and documentation. Zine was built during ZSF working hour. This has been my project that I've been doing while working at the ZSF. So in a sense, if anybody here is donating to the ZSF, you guys kind of paid for it to some degree. So I guess thank you and you're welcome. But jokes aside, my title is VP of Community, which doesn't sound particularly concrete as a title. And to be fair, the title is not particularly concrete. The title VP of Community is just so that companies, when they message me, when they message the ZSF and I reply to their email, they see that somebody with the title of VP replies, they're happy, they don't feel the need to escalate. And so that's the actual reason of the title. But my job description is actually to increase the total amount of effort being spent on the Zig project. So I do actively try to find ways to, well, as I said, have more hours being spent, more effort being spent on the Zig project. That said, obviously in a, how can I say, in an elegant way, not by, forcing anybody to, to work when they don't want to or anything like that. One way of doing that is communication, for sure. And communication for the Zig project is important, also because when communication falls apart and Andrew makes a spicy decision, people get angry. So there's that. But the same is also true for any kind of Zig initiative, community initiative. For example, Zigtoberfest. You have to communicate to people that the event exists, how to get there, and why to get there, right? With the agenda. So you're making a software project and you would like others to maybe use your software or collaborate with you somehow. Teaching them how your software works is kind of important. So I'm getting really ahead of myself. But the point is that Zine was built to help community projects better communicate their value. And that is critical. This is not the kind of thing that you wake up in the morning thinking, oh man, I really need to work on my communication skills to better communicate the value of my projects. No, you're thinking about, that allocation that you could get rid of, or that algorithm, that to-do comment that you left somewhere. Totally fair, makes sense. But it is important to know how to write a good README. And basically a static website, in a sense, is like an extension of a README to some degree. And yeah, this is also very important because we are kind of getting at the verge of the Zig collaboration era. So for people who have been part of the Zig community for a while, you remember that for a long time, before we had any kind of package management, you could depend on other people's code, but it was always a little bit problematic and annoying. You had to vendor their dependency somehow, or use Git submodules, bad move. And so it was kind of janky. Now, the package manager is not full-fledged yet. It's not at the level of quality, well, at the level of feature completeness of like NPM. But for what it does extremely well. You can depend on other people's repositories. You can target a specific commit, a branch, a tag. You can point the thing at a tarball. Interestingly, you can depend on projects that aren't Zig projects at all. I created recently a organization on GitHub called All Your Codebase. All Your Codebase is an organization where we basically package, there's a big README that I invite you to read if you're interested, but I'm going to skip that for now. We basically package C and C++ projects for Zig. So Opus, for example, I've been doing, this is foreshadowing, by the way. I've been doing something with audio compression, and I depend on the Opus library, which is written in C. And what I do is that I literally depend on one of their commits. They don't have anything. They don't have a build.zig. They don't have a build.zig.zone file. They just have C code. And I provide the build file for it. And I only package the subset that interested me. But so this is to say that that's also another thing that you can do. It's very practical. And so now I can depend on their code. And now, if you too want to depend on Opus, of course, you can do the packaging yourself based on your sensibilities. But now you can also go to All Your Codebase and grab my package. And there's not only my stuff in here. Actually, very few of these repos are mine. Most of them are from somebody else. we have a bunch of stuff. And I'm also like, I'm inviting anybody who wants to contribute to this organization, again, if they want to. The README tells you what the rules are, why you might be interested, etc. So I'll just say one thing on this topic. Normally, I would recommend strictly to anybody to keep ownership of the stuff that you write. Don't give it to anybody else. But in this case, packaging of C and C++ dependencies tend to be a very utilitarian thing that you do. You don't really take a lot of pride in having done so well. It's just the utility of, yeah, now I can use this thing and I don't have to touch make or CMake. So basically plopping it in a shared organization also could let you share some of the maintainership burden. Somebody else could like land a patch for you if you're away, that kind of stuff. So the Z collaboration era is becoming a real thing. And again, I don't know, if you've never been in the Z community for long enough and you haven't seen how it was before, I just promise you, things have been changing a lot compared to how it was in the past. One interesting interaction, though, that now comes into play is that we are a decentralized community at its core. There is no one official Zig community place where to be and have all the Zig discussions. There's the official GitHub repository if you want to contribute on the official code base, but that's like just issues and PRs, and that's kind of it. And comments on those. If you want to chat with people, ask for help, share your projects, you have to do that in a proper community, and none of them is official in any shape or form. So some of us are on Discord. Who's on Discord? Okay, everybody. Who's on IRC? Let's go, the proud IRC people. Nice. Zulip? Okay, nice. Some Zulips. What else is there? I don't know. Okay, enough. Matrix. You're on Matrix. Who's on Matrix? I'm sorry, guys. I'm so sorry that you have to do that. But yeah, it makes sense. Like, you don't like Discord. I don't like Matrix, man. I don't like Element. So yeah, it's fair. You want to be somewhere else. The problem, though, is that if you're all decentralized, then it becomes hard to know what other people are working on, because it obviously is incredibly easy to learn about projects that are being developed in the same community that you're in. It becomes much harder to know what's happening on IRC. I have no fucking clue what's happening on IRC, right? Also, the logs get lost. So I believe that right now there is no working login bot for the Zig IRC channel.
I think Johnny Marler made one.
He did, but if you click on that link, it always says that it doesn't have anything. So yeah, it is what it is. So and I mean, to some degree, I guess that's fine. But as things move forward, this becomes, in my opinion, something that is worth thinking about actively and being deliberate in how we want to move in that sense. Meaning, if we don't do anything and we just leave things be as they are, the end result is that whenever one of these platforms decides that it's finally time to get one more VC round, go public, pivot to AI, or whatever the next stupid thing is going to be, then they're going to mess up your experience. And now then everybody divides again into other communities. And now all the collaboration that was happening there, which again doesn't necessarily mean people committing to other people's repositories, but even just being aware of things. For example, Zine as a project has a bunch of dependencies. Most are made by me, but like one big critical one that unfortunately I was imagining could have been like a great high five moment with Neurosite, who was supposed to be here today. I shared the 3-seater plus grammars repository with the flow editor. Actually, the flow editor makes it, and I steal what Neurosite makes. So, and that's great. So we don't really commit into each other repositories, but if I wasn't in a chat channel where he told me, look, I have already prepackaged all of 3-seater, all these stupid grammars, and also he did the work for creating themes for those things, for syntax highlighting. Like, he did a lot of extra work. I wouldn't have known that. So I would either not have had that feature right away, or had to reinvent the wheel. One wheel that I really would not have wanted to have to reinvent. So collaboration is really, like, it helps a lot with synergy. Yeah, and as I was saying, the problem is, like, we just cannot leave our critical social infrastructure and like build it on someone else's platform, because bad shit happens all the fucking time. So my point, I guess, is my main point is that please consider using Zine to build simple and elegant and compelling websites so that more people learn what you're working on. Actually, it doesn't even have to be Zine. Obviously, it's there for you. It's like it's genuinely being developed for the utility of the Zine community first and foremost. But obviously, if you don't like it, you don't have to like it. Make your own competing static site generator. Make it better. Holy shit, that would be awesome. Or you just really like JavaScript and you really want to have that React front end. Go for it. But really, what matters is that you should make an effort to communicate what you're working on, because as we are right now, and in a public manner, because if only thing you do is share that information with people with you in the same chat channel, there is a huge chunk of the Z community somewhere else that doesn't know what you're working on, who might appreciate that. And vice versa. Actually, we're not yet at vice versa. The more effective you are at explaining what problem you're solving, the better support you will get. You will get more contributors, you will get more users, somebody who actually might want to use your stuff. Maybe even funding. It depends on how serious and it depends on the shape of the project. Most projects don't really have a shape where you can realistically ask for funding until you get a certain critical level of success already. But in some cases, that also can have an impact on funding. I can promise you that if the Zig project did not have an official website, that would have had a negative impact on our ability to get funding. Promise. And so this is the inverse. At the same time, don't forget that cool stuff is being worked on by other people, even if they're not present in your favorite social platform, and we should kind of make an effort to learn about what's going on there. Because otherwise, and not to be nice, but because it's for our own benefit. Related to that, you might have noticed that on the official Zig website, there's a new menu item called Devlog. Let me zoom it in. It's next to source. The Devlog is the idea of, I'll bring it up as an actual page. So the devlog is basically like, I guess, our own private Twitter in a sense. So it's one page where basically there are like updates related to the development of Zig, and they are not necessarily about a specific release, a specific commit. Most of them are about what's happening with the code, but some of them are also about other related Zig stuff, sneak previews of cool things that are reaching a certain level of functionality that they can almost be used, that kind of stuff. And crucially, this exposes an RSS feed. And now, who here loves RSS feeds? Notice that I'm not going to raise my hand. Okay, I don't love RSS feeds. I don't think they're a particularly winning technology when it comes to sharing your stuff. If your goal is to reach end users, I feel like that it's an obvious statement that stuff like Twitter, Mastodon, Blue Sky, whatever, LinkedIn, even fucking LinkedIn, will be more effective at reaching individuals than RSS feeds. But RSS feeds are definitely a workable technology for sharing updates in an automated fashion. So the idea is to create feeds that then can also be consumed automatically by communities. For example, I have my Discord server, and I have one channel where I pull updates from the Zine Devlog. I have a channel dedicated to the Zine Devlog, and I pull entries from my devlog in there. This might not seem a huge difference, because what I could do is just post those updates in there instead of doing the one extra hop website RSS feed in there. But the key point is that by having that be available outside of Discord, anybody who isn't on Discord has an opportunity to learn what's happening with Zine. Same with the official Zig devlog. And so I guess my point is that you should consider getting a similar setup you yourself as well if you're working on a project of that kind. I wrote a blog post about this. It's called Critical Social Infrastructure for Z Communities. It mostly says what I just mentioned, dives deeper into certain things. It tells you a little bit more in detail how you can pull off a devlog using Zine. There's a minor interesting technical thing that makes it easier, but nothing crazy. You can pull that off with whatever freaking tooling you have at your disposal. So yeah, that's kind of my point. Please make static websites. Thank you. Well, actually, there's one more thing. There's one last thing. So Static websites are interesting, but I mentioned earlier that I was working with Opus. Opus is a audio codec that allows you to send compressed audio. Well, compressed audio, then you can send it over the internet. You don't have to, but that's one common use case. I've also packaged another thing for all your code base called. Let me see. Do I still have all your code base? No. I also packaged another project called SRT. There we go. It's called SRT. SRT is a. Oh man, I don't remember what the acronym stands for. Let me see. Oh, right. Of course, I'm in the docs here. SRT stands for secure, maybe? Yeah, secure reliable transport protocol. It's a reliable real-time protocol over UDP, kind of like RTP or the other multimedia streaming protocols. Long story short, I'm getting fed up a little bit with Discord, just like I was fed up with Hugo. And with some other people, we're working on something to fix that. That's it. I'm gonna leave it at that. It's still a private project, but it's out. So, yeah, thank you for it.
Oh, thank you so much for giving this talk. Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah, so you talk about kind of people to make their own blog posts and do their own, news and all that stuff. But then I come to a question of kind of scalability, because most of the time those get kind of posted on Discord under the private way channel or whatever, like that's the specific channel by showing stuff up there. But of course, that's not available through, as you mentioned, the IRC, the Matrix, the Tulip, or whatever, like all the community stuff down there. Any thoughts on kind of scalability of these kinds of, interesting blog style, take?
Yeah, for sure. That's a point that I decided to cut from the talk. It's in the blog post, but that's a fair point. Maybe I'll start with one. I'll clarify one point, and then I'll actually answer the question. So just to clarify, the idea of a devlog is not for it to be blogging. The idea for a devlog is to be microblogging. So it's meant to be very short updates about the interesting things that you're working on. The blog post explains what I mean by that, what is even the point of making a distinction between a blogging and microblogging in that context. But I do think it's, I guess the long story short version of it is writing blog posts takes effort. Not everybody wants to do it. So sometimes you have a small thought that is big enough, just big enough for a tweet style kind of thing, but you don't feel like you can develop it to a full-fledged blog post. So that's the idea of a devlog, for it to be more like microblogging, not exactly full-fledged blogging. That said, yeah, of course, you post the stuff on your website, put an RSS feed on there, and now you're shouting into the void, and you don't know what happens after that. Yes. The other side of this equation is for community organizers to create mechanisms, which maybe will not be appropriate for every single community out there, but it's to create mechanisms for the communities where it makes sense to do so, to have a place where they can actively pull from those feeds. Some of that needs to be a technical thing, meaning, for example, if you want to pull an RSS feed from Discord, right now there's like some premium bots that can pull from RSS feeds and post into your Discord channel, but they have a limit of, like, the one that I know of has a limit of 5 feeds for free, then you have to pay. So, and maybe other platforms don't even have that. So what I am going to work on is a RSS bot that will know how to publish on using webhooks, which I believe not only webhooks, but like as a starting point with webhooks, which I believe is a way of gluing things together that tends to be to work across most social platforms. Now, does that mean that the IRC channel will start pulling in feeds automatically? Probably not. But Discord could totally do it. My Discord server could totally do it. The other thing that is definitely not Discord that we are working on is kind of designed to also be able to do that out of the box. So yes, there's obviously the other side of the equation that needs to be fixed. And thankfully, you guys have a VP of community who will go and knock on every community's door and ask if the admins are interested in making that thing happen. That's the idea.
I have a slightly technical question on Zine.
Yeah.
I've seen superficially that you created SuperMD and SuperHTML as templating languages. Have you considered at some point the idea to just use Zine as a language to create the web page? Like, have it code return a struct?
Yeah. Considered in a sense, I was aware of that possibility. I never really considered it because I wanted Zine to be somewhat similar to Hugo in the sense of what I like about Hugo and Hugo's style static-site generators is that they take away power from you. If you want the maximum flexibility, you can use a JavaScript framework and you will be able to do the most insane shit in there, which is totally overkill for any kind of static website or any reasonable one. But then you have that power and you will do it. And the end result is that if anybody else has to touch your thing, it's going to be a mess. And that also has an impact on build performance because building a static website, it's literally a build pipeline. And when the framework tries to hide that from you, tries to make you forget that it's a build pipeline, then you start adding weird data dependencies and your thing is not going to be able anymore at all to, for example, hot reload whenever you change things. That will become impossible. I want the experience to be instant, very fast, instant feedback whenever you are like editing live with the editor, and also be pretty fast at rebuilding. Like the Zigtoberfest website right now, whenever you make a change, it's up in like 10 seconds, and 8 of those plus are just the GitHub action doing its thing. Everything else is instant. So what I like about Hugo is that you write templates in a restricted language that prohibits you from doing things that are too insane with the template. And it also makes a separation between the templating and the content so that you first of all don't do too many insane things in the templating side, but also the content stays as pristine as possible. Hugo, in my opinion, fails at that. If you look at my documentation for SuperMD, I have, in my opinion, a pretty big critique of Hugo and all other static-site generators that use curly brace syntax and also that allow you to extend Markdown with templating. I don't support templating in a Markdown, for example. There is a way for you to specify embeds that aren't the default ones in Markdown, but you can't macro shit in it. There's just no way. So read the documentation. It tries to explain the point really well. And long story short, over time I found that disciplined way of dealing with content and separating content and templating and keeping templating reasonably simple helps a lot with making content creation more scalable, like more professional in a sense. I'll conclude just though by saying that there is a feature currently missing in Zine, which is the ability to create your own custom scripts. I do want to add the ability to create scripts, but it's going to be like a kind of a last resort thing. Oh, I really need to do that one weird thing in one place. Yeah, then you write a script for it and you call it as a function from your templating language. That works, but it's designed to really be a very small thing. Yeah, that's it.
I am a bit obsessed with accessibility. Because of that, I wanted to ask, what about, for example, ARIA HTML tags?
Okay.
Will those be ever supported?
You can put ARIA tags wherever you want it. Like the templating, the markup, like the act of creating HTML templates is entirely up to you. Like you start from a blank slate. So, yeah.
To that, sometimes that doesn't really work because you have to get specific part sections from within the
content. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a fair point.
That is what I mean.
Yeah. So should the SuperMD HTML generations support more ARIA for sure? 100%. I don't see why not. It does support fairly consistently the ability to add alt captions to things like images, and so that works. But yeah, I haven't done like a full complete review over like does it do accessibility super well? Probably not right now.
It's actually fine.
Yeah, but yeah. Is this it? No more questions? I think we did it.
So thank you again.